I never imagined that saying yes to a stranger would unravel every certainty I'd built around my daughter and myself. That one Saturday morning in March, sitting across from Emma in our corner booth at Rosie's Cafe, I was thinking about pancakes and custody schedules and how to make 8 more years of childhood feel like enough time. I wasn't thinking about the woman who would walk through that door and rewrite the definition of family I thought I understood. Have you ever said yes to a stranger and watched your entire world fall apart? I did, March 15th, 2024. And somehow, against every logical outcome, it saved me. The thing about divorce is that nobody prepares you for the Saturdays. They warn you about the legal fees, the division of assets, the custody arrangements that carve your child's week into color-coded blocks on a shared calendar. They don't warn you about the empty space beside you at breakfast, or the way your daughter's questions land like grenades in quiet moments, or how every other weekend feels like borrowed time you're already losing. Emma had syrup on her nose, again. She was telling me about the life cycle of poison dart frogs with the kind of passionate intensity only a 6-year-old could muster for amphibian toxicology. Her hands gesturing wildly enough that her chocolate milk nearly toppled twice. I was only half listening, my mind circling the conversation I needed to have with Patricia's lawyer on Monday morning. 8 months since the divorce finalized, and my ex-wife was already pushing for modifications to our agreement. Better schools, she'd said. More opportunities. Code for the life she'd built with Richard in Lincoln Park, where the buildings had doormen and the neighbors didn't look like me. "Daddy, you're not listening." Emma's voice cut through my spiral. I blinked, focusing on her face. Syrup. Definitely needed a napkin. "I am listening, sweetheart. You were telling me about the frogs, the deadly ones. Miss Patterson said just one touch could kill you. Isn't that amazing?" "Terrifying," I corrected, reaching across the table to wipe her chin. "Remind me never to go to the Amazon rainforest." She giggled, her light-up sneakers flashing pink beneath the table as she kicked her feet. "You're so silly, Daddy. The frogs are only dangerous if you lick them." "I'm not planning to lick any frogs." "Good, because then I'd be sad." The simplicity of her concern made my chest ache. This was what Patricia didn't understand when she talked about providing Emma with more. More tutors, more activities, more exposure to culture and opportunity. She couldn't quantify these Saturday mornings, couldn't put a price tag on syrup-stained conversations and the way Emma's entire face lit up when I gave her my full attention. Patricia measured love in private school applications and summer camps in the Berkshires. I measured it in pancakes and the promise that I would always show up. "Can I get more chocolate milk?" She already knew the answer. We'd been doing this dance for months now, every Saturday at Rosie's, and the script never changed. You already had orange juice, but it's Saturday. I raised an eyebrow. "And what's special about Saturday?" "It's our day." She said it like the words explained everything, like the concept of our day was self-evident truth rather than something I'd desperately tried to construct from the wreckage of our fractured family. "Fine. But just a small one." Her squeal of victory made heads turn. George, the owner, appeared at our table before I could even flag him down. He was 68, white-haired and barrel-chested, moving through his cafe with the easy authority of a man who'd spent 3 decades mastering this exact rhythm. He knew Emma's order by heart, knew which booth we preferred, knew without asking that I took my coffee black and bitter enough to match my mood on the mornings when Patricia's texts came through before sunrise. "1 chocolate milk for the young lady." George performed a theatrical bow that sent Emma into fresh giggles. "And more coffee for Dad, please." He studied my face for a beat too long. "Rough week, aren't they all?" He squeezed my shoulder once, a gesture that meant more than the words we weren't saying, and disappeared back toward the kitchen. George had become something like a father figure in the months since the divorce, filling a space my own dad had left empty when he died of a heart attack during my senior year of high school. There was comfort in his steady presence, in the way he remembered details and asked questions and never once made me feel like I was failing at this impossible task of single parenthood. I let my gaze drift across Rosie's. Saturday mornings here were controlled chaos. Families packed into red vinyl booths, couples lingering over coffee and newspapers, solo readers claiming corner tables with paperbacks and earbuds. The jukebox in the back corner was playing Etta James, and someone's toddler was shrieking with laughter near the restroom. This was exactly why I'd chosen this place 8 months ago when I was still figuring out what divorce looked like in practice. I needed somewhere warm, somewhere loud enough that Emma's energy wouldn't feel out of place, somewhere that felt like ours instead of remnants of the life Patricia and I had built and abandoned. I checked my watch, 11:47. We had just over an hour before I needed to drive Emma back to Patricia's new apartment in Lincoln Park. 63 minutes of normal before the handoff, before my daughter disappeared behind Richard's expensive front door. And I drove home to my one-bedroom in South Chicago, where the silence waited like an ambush. "Daddy, do you think Mommy misses me when I'm with you?" The question landed exactly where it was designed to, right in the center of my chest where all my failures lived. I set down my coffee mug carefully, buying myself 3 seconds to choose words that wouldn't damage her. "Of course she does, Emma. She loves you very much." "Then why doesn't she come to breakfast with us?" "Because your mother wanted a different life. Because somewhere between the mortgage and the arguments and my refusal to become someone flashier, someone more exciting, someone who could give her the status she craved, we stopped being people who could sit in the same room without bleeding. Because I was too safe, too predictable, too comfortable, and Patricia needed more than comfortable. Because being a black accountant married to a black lawyer wasn't the power couple narrative she'd wanted, and Richard offered her something I never could. Sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out. But that doesn't mean we love you any less, not even a little bit. Emma considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Her small face was serious, processing truths too large for 6-year-old understanding. Then she shrugged, returned to her pancakes, and just like that, the moment passed. Children had this remarkable ability to hold pain and joy simultaneously without letting either one consume them. I envied that resilience even as I tried to protect it. The cafe door opened. I didn't notice at first, too focused on Emma's sticky fingers and the text from Patricia that had just lit up my phone. "We need to talk about summer plans," as if summer wasn't 4 months away, as if she wasn't already maneuvering to take more of Emma's time, more of our Saturdays, more of the limited hours I had to prove I was enough. But gradually I became aware of a shift in the ambient noise. Conversations dropping off one by one, heads turning, that particular quality of attention that meant something unusual had entered the space. I followed the collective gaze toward the entrance. A woman stood just inside the doorway, maybe late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started to come loose. She wore jeans and an oversized rust-colored sweater, and she was balanced on forearm crutches, the kind that spoke of permanence rather than temporary injury. Her left leg ended just below the knee where the prosthetic began, visible in the gap between her pant leg and shoe. She scanned the packed cafe with an expression I recognized too well, hope wrestling with resignation, the face of someone who'd been disappointed enough times to expect it, but couldn't quite kill the wanting. I watched her navigate toward a booth near the window, where 2 middle-aged women sat with shopping bags piled on the empty side of their table. I couldn't hear what she asked, but I saw her gesture toward the space, saw the hopeful tilt of her head. One woman glanced at her companion. Some silent communication passed between them. The first woman shook her head, reached out to pat the shopping bags protectively. The stranger's shoulders dropped just a fraction. Just enough to notice if you were watching. She moved to the next table. A young couple absorbed in each other barely looked up when she spoke. The man shook his head without meeting her eyes. The woman found something fascinating on her phone screen. Table after table, the same choreography. An older man with the Tribune spread across his booth. Sorry, I'm expecting someone. A group of teenagers sharing one plate of fries. Uncomfortable laughter and averted gazes. A woman with a laptop. I'm working, said with enough firmness to mean go away. Something tightened in my chest as I watched this rejection play out in real time. Nobody was being cruel. Nobody was saying anything technically wrong, they were just saying no, and with each refusal the woman seemed to fold inward a little more, her movements becoming smaller, her expression more carefully neutral. This was the casual cruelty of discomfort, the way people could make themselves invisible to something that challenged their Saturday morning ease. "Daddy, what's wrong with that lady?" Emma's voice pulled me back. I looked at my daughter, at her honest curiosity unmarred by the social conditioning that told adults to look away from difference. "Nothing's wrong with her, sweetheart. She's just looking for somewhere to sit, but there's no room." "No, there's not." Except I looked at our booth. Emma and I sat on one side, and across from us the entire other bench was empty except for Emma's pink backpack and my jacket. We had space. We had more than space. We had a whole side of the table sitting unused while this woman moved through Rosie's collecting rejections like coins. The stranger approached another table, a family of 4 who dismissed her before she could finish her sentence. She was heading toward the door now, her movements slower, exhaustion showing in the set of her shoulders. Giving up, preparing to leave hungry and alone because an entire room full of people couldn't be bothered to make room. I didn't think about what I was doing, didn't weigh the social calculus or consider implications. I simply raised my hand and caught her eye before she could reach the exit. "Excuse me," my voice cut through the ambient noise louder than I'd intended. "There's room here if you'd like." The cafe seemed to pause. That's what it felt like anyway, a collective intake of breath, a moment of suspended animation where everyone was watching and pretending not to watch. The stranger stopped, turned, looked at me with an expression that was equal parts surprise and weariness, as if kindness itself had become suspicious. "Are you sure?" 3 words that carried the weight of every previous rejection, every time someone had made her feel like an imposition. "Absolutely." I gestured to the empty bench across from us. "We've got plenty of space." She didn't move immediately, just stood there in the middle of the crowded cafe, crutches planted on the checkered floor, studying my face like she was trying to determine whether this was genuine or some elaborate setup for humiliation. I understood that hesitation. I'd worn it myself for months after Patricia left, that constant second-guessing of other people's intentions, that bone-deep certainty that kindness must have a catch. "Please." This time my voice was softer. "Really, it's fine." Something in her expression shifted, a wall coming down just enough to let hope through. "Okay, thank you." She made her way to our table and I stood to help clear the path, moving my coffee mug aside to give her room. Up close I could see the fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes, the carefully controlled way she held herself together. She settled onto the bench across from us with practiced efficiency, every motion economical and deliberate. She propped her crutches against the wall beside her. "Thank you." She said it again, and this time there was color in her cheeks. Embarrassment or relief or both. "I know this is awkward. I'm sorry to intrude on your breakfast." "You're not intruding." I retook my seat. "Really, we're just having pancakes, nothing fancy." Emma, who'd been watching this entire exchange with eyes like saucers, suddenly piped up. "I'm Emma. I'm 6. What's your name? Emma. Heat flooded my face. You can't just ask people their personal information. We talked about this, remember? About being polite? But the stranger was laughing. A real laugh, spontaneous and surprised, the kind that seemed to catch her off guard. It's okay, she smiled at Emma. I'm Rebecca. I'm 27, in case you were wondering. That's old, Emma said it matter-of-factly, no malice in the observation. What is it with you today? I wanted to disappear into the vinyl booth. Rebecca laughed again, and I saw some of the tension drain from her shoulders. You know what? You're absolutely right. It feels pretty old sometimes. George appeared at our table with a questioning look, his eyes moving between me and Rebecca with an expression I couldn't quite read. Can I get you anything? Rebecca glanced at the menu, then shook her head. Just coffee, please. Black. You got it. He disappeared again. An awkward silence settled over the table like morning fog. I wasn't sure what to say. Wasn't sure if saying anything was appropriate or if Rebecca just wanted to sit in peace and drink her coffee without having to make conversation with strangers. But Emma had no such reservations. Did you hurt your leg? Emma. I felt heat flood my face again. You cannot ask people about their bodies. That's private. We've had this conversation about personal questions. But Rebecca was shaking her head, her smile still in place. No, it's okay. Really? She looked directly at Emma, meeting the child's frank curiosity with equal frankness. I was in an accident a couple years ago. Lost my leg, so now I wear a prosthetic, that's the fake one, and use crutches to help me get around. Does it hurt? Sometimes. But mostly I'm just used to it now. Can you still run? Not really, but I can swim pretty well. I'm learning to swim. Emma's excitement was immediate and total. Daddy takes me to lessons on Thursdays. I can do the doggy paddle and almost do freestyle, but I keep drinking the water. That was my problem too. There was something in Rebecca's voice, a warmth and gentleness that made my throat tight. I watched the two of them fall into easy conversation. Emma chattering about swimming and school and her collection of stuffed animals. Rebecca listening with genuine interest and asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually paying attention. George returned with Rebecca's coffee, and she wrapped her hands around the mug like it was a lifeline. So what brings you to Rosie's on a Saturday morning? I asked, finally finding my voice. Besides the excellent coffee. Rebecca's smile flickered. Just for a second, just enough for me to catch the shadow that passed across her face. It's my birthday, actually. The words came out almost defensive, as if she expected to be judged for spending it alone in a cafe. It's your birthday? Emma's voice went up 3 octaves. Like today, right now? Yeah, today. We have to sing. Emma was already starting to slide out of the booth. Daddy, we have to sing happy birthday. Emma, wait. I reached for her, but she was too fast, already standing on the booth's bench seat, her small hands cupped around her mouth. Excuse me, she shouted to the entire cafe. Excuse me, everyone, it's this lady's birthday and we need to sing. Oh no. I wanted to sink through the floor, wanted to travel back in time 5 seconds and stop my daughter from making this announcement to a room full of strangers who just wanted to eat their pancakes in peace. But Emma, bless her fearless heart, was undeterred. Happy birthday to you. She sang at the top of her lungs, her voice clear and completely off-key. For a frozen moment, nothing happened. And then someone laughed. Someone else joined in the singing. And then, like a wave gathering momentum, the entire cafe erupted in the most chaotic, disorganized, beautiful rendition of Happy Birthday I'd ever heard. Strangers were grinning. The group of teenagers were clapping along. The older man with the newspaper was conducting with one hand. Even the couple who'd ignored Rebecca earlier were singing, shame or compassion, or just the infectious energy of the moment pulling them in. And Rebecca had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking with laughter or sobs or some combination of both. When the song ended, the cafe erupted in applause and a few whoops. Then everyone returned to their breakfast as if nothing extraordinary had happened, as if impromptu birthday celebrations were standard Saturday morning protocol. Emma sat back down, looking enormously pleased with herself. Emma. I was still processing what had just happened. That was incredibly. You can't just make everyone in a public place sing on command. She needed a birthday song, Daddy. Everyone needs a birthday song. I looked at Rebecca, who was wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater, still crying and laughing simultaneously. I'm so sorry. She's 6 and has zero concept of social boundaries. Don't apologize, Rebecca interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. That was the nicest thing anyone's done for me in a really long time. George emerged from the kitchen carrying a small slice of chocolate cake with a single candle stuck in the center. On the house, he said, setting it down in front of Rebecca with a wink. Happy birthday, Rebecca. Rebecca stared at the cake like it was a miracle, and I noticed George had used her name, not Miss or young lady, her actual name, which meant he knew her, which meant this wasn't random kindness but something more deliberate. Make a wish, Emma commanded. You have to make a wish before the candle burns out. Rebecca closed her eyes. I watched her face in the flickering candlelight, saw the way she held herself very still, as if the wish required her entire concentration. And then she blew out the candle. The cafe applauded again, smaller this time, just the tables immediately around us, but genuine nonetheless. What did you wish for? Emma asked. Can't tell you, Rebecca smiled. Or it won't come true. That's the rule, Emma agreed seriously. Like with shooting stars. Rebecca cut into the cake with the side of her fork, and I noticed her hands were trembling slightly. Would you like to share it? We already had pancakes. But it's birthday cake, Emma pointed out. Birthday cake doesn't count as breakfast. It's its own category. Is that a fact? Miss Patterson said so. Well, if Miss Patterson said so. So we shared the cake, 3 forks, 1 small slice, and a warmth spreading through my chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. What nobody in that cafe knew was that this woman had lost her parents and 9-year-old sister exactly 2 years ago in an apartment fire. Today was her 27th birthday, the first without them. And somehow my daughter's fearless insistence on celebration had given her something I couldn't name, but recognized in the way her shoulders finally relaxed, in the way she smiled without that shadow behind her eyes. So what do you do, Rebecca? I fell into the easy rhythm of small talk. Besides have birthdays in cafes. Rebecca's expression shuddered just for a second. I'm between jobs at the moment. I was working at a bookstore in Wicker Park, but they closed down last month. So now I'm figuring out what's next. That's rough. The job market's brutal right now. Yeah. She poked at the cake with her fork. It's been challenging. I heard the weight behind that word, challenging. The kind of word people used when the real truth was too heavy to speak out loud. What about you? She asked, clearly eager to change the subject. I'm an accountant. And before I could stop her, Emma's face scrunched up in theatrical disgust. It's so boring, she confirmed. He works with numbers all day, just numbers, no animals or anything. But numbers pay for chocolate milk, I pointed out. That's true, Emma conceded. Rebecca smiled, but I could see the exhaustion creeping back into her expression. The way she was holding her shoulders a little too carefully, as if pain was waiting just beneath the surface. Are you okay? I asked quietly. Rebecca blinked, surprised by the directness of the question. I'm fine, just tired. It's been a long week. I didn't push. I recognized the deflection for what it was, the same thing I'd been doing for 8 months every time someone asked how I was handling the divorce. Fine. Everything's fine. The polite fiction maintained because what else could you do? They finished the cake. Emma told Rebecca about her stuffed animal collection, 47 animals and counting, each one with a name and backstory. Rebecca told Emma about learning to swim after her accident, about the physical therapy and the fear and the first time she managed to float on her back without panicking. And I sat there watching this strange and unexpected connection form between my daughter and a woman I'd known for less than an hour, and felt something shift inside me. This was why I'd said yes. Not because I was a good person or because I wanted credit for being kind, but because moments like this, moments of genuine human connection, of walls coming down and strangers becoming something more, these were the moments that made life bearable. These were the antidote to loneliness, to grief, to the slow erosion of hope that came from living too long in your own head. "Daddy," Emma said suddenly, "what time is it?" I checked my watch and felt my stomach drop. 11:53. We need to go. Your mom's expecting you at noon. Emma's face fell. Already? Already? I signaled George for the check, already reaching for my wallet and trying not to think about the careful budgeting that governed every purchase these days. Rebecca was gathering her crutches, preparing to leave as well. "Thank you," she said to me as she stood. "For the table, for the cake, for everything. It was our pleasure." Rebecca looked at Emma. "It was really nice to meet you, Emma. Thanks for the birthday song. You're welcome." Then, with the kind of innocent bluntness only children can manage, "Will we see you again?" The question hung in the air. I saw something flicker across Rebecca's face. Hope, maybe, or fear of hope. "I don't know," Rebecca said honestly. "Maybe. We're here every Saturday," Emma announced before I could stop her. "Same table, same time. Daddy says it's our tradition." "Emma," I started, but Rebecca was already smiling. "That's a good tradition." And then, before I could figure out how to navigate this moment without making it awkward, Rebecca was moving toward the door, crutches clicking against the checkered floor, her rust-colored sweater disappearing into the Saturday morning crowd. I watched her go, feeling oddly bereft, as if something important was walking out of my life before I'd even had a chance to understand what it was. "Daddy, come on." Emma was tugging at my hand. "We're going to be late." "Right. Patricia, custody schedule. Real life." I let Emma pull me toward the door, waving goodbye to George, stepping out into the sharp March air that still carried winter's bite despite the calendar's promise of spring. George caught my arm before I could leave. His grip was firm, his expression serious. "That woman, Rebecca. You did a good thing inviting her to sit, just seemed like the right thing to do." George studied my face for a long moment. "Her family used to come here every Sunday for years. Parents' little sister. Good people. They all died in a fire 2 years ago. Same building, just 2 blocks from here. I tried to get to them, but the smoke was too thick." Rebecca was the only one who made it out. The information landed like a physical blow. I looked back toward the door where Rebecca had disappeared. She comes here on her birthday because it's the only place left that remembers them. George squeezed my shoulder once and disappeared back into the kitchen, leaving me standing there with Emma's hand in mine and a weight in my chest I hadn't expected. The drive back to Patricia's apartment was quiet. Emma dozed in her car seat, exhausted from her week at school and her morning of pancakes and impromptu birthday celebrations. I navigated the familiar route on autopilot, my mind elsewhere. I kept thinking about Rebecca's face when Emma sang, kept thinking about the way the entire cafe had joined in, how strangers had set aside their own breakfasts and conversations to celebrate someone they didn't know. Kept thinking about what it meant that Rebecca had been turned away from table after table before reaching ours. What did that say about the world we were living in? About the casual cruelty of discomfort, the way people could be kind in theory but cruel in practice. I pulled up to Patricia's building, a sleek high-rise in Lincoln Park with a doorman who always looked at me like I was delivering a package rather than returning my own daughter. Patricia was waiting in the lobby, stylish as always in yoga pants that probably cost more than my car payment. She smiled when she saw Emma, the kind of smile that I used to think was just for me back when we were still we instead of me and her. "Hey, baby." Patricia swept Emma into a hug. "Did you have fun with Daddy? We met a lady and it was her birthday and I sang to her and the whole cafe sang." Emma reported breathlessly. Patricia looked at me, one eyebrow raised. "It's a long story, I'm sure." Her tone was neutral, but I heard the implication anyway. "You and your tendency to overcomplicate simple things. Say goodbye to Daddy." Emma hugged me fiercely, her small arms squeezing tight around my waist. "Love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. Be good, okay?" "Okay." And then she was gone, disappearing into the elevator with Patricia, leaving me standing in the lobby with the doorman's judgmental stare and the hollow ache that always came with these handoffs. I drove home to my one-bedroom in South Chicago, the apartment I'd rented in a hurry after the divorce, prioritizing proximity to Emma's school over everything else. It was small, sparsely furnished, the kind of place that felt temporary even though I'd been living there for 8 months. I spent the rest of Saturday catching up on work I didn't have time for during the week, doing laundry, meal prepping for the days ahead. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt more like absence than peace. Sunday passed in a similar blur of chores and avoidance. By Monday morning, the encounter at Rosie's had already started to fade into the background hum of memory. Something nice that had happened, something kind, but not something that would change anything. Except on Tuesday when I stopped by Rosie's for a quick coffee before work. George was waiting for me. She came back Sunday. He said it without preamble. "Rebecca sat at the same table, asked if you and Emma would be here Saturday." I felt something shift in my chest. "What did you tell her?" "That you're here every Saturday. Same time, same table." George poured my coffee, his movements deliberate. "She's been through hell, Matthew, more than most people could survive, but she's fighting her way back, and I think maybe you and Emma gave her a reason to keep fighting." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and took my coffee and drove to work thinking about strangers and second chances and the way kindness could ripple out in ways you couldn't predict. Saturday came again. Emma and I arrived at Rosie's at our usual time, and there, sitting alone at a small table near the window, was Rebecca. She was wearing the same rust-colored sweater, her crutches propped against the wall beside her, a cup of black coffee cradled in her hands. She was staring out the window at the street beyond, her expression distant and unreadable. "Maya!" Emma shrieked loud enough to make half the cafe turn and look. Rebecca's head snapped around, surprise flooding her face, and then slowly, tentatively, she smiled. Emma was already dragging me across the cafe, weaving between tables with complete disregard for personal space or social conventions. "You came back," Emma said when we reached Rebecca's table. "I told Daddy you'd come back." "Hi, Emma." Rebecca's voice was warm but tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in days. "Hi, Matthew." "Hi." I suddenly felt awkward in a way I hadn't the previous week. "It's good to see you again. You too." Rebecca gestured to the empty chairs at her table. Would you like to sit?" This time it was her offering me a seat. "We'd love to." And just like that, a routine was born. What started as a single act of kindness became something neither Rebecca nor I had planned for. A pattern that repeated itself with the quiet insistence of habit forming before either of us realized what was happening. The second Saturday, Rebecca was already there when we arrived, and Emma rushed to her table like they were old friends reuniting after years apart, rather than strangers who'd met once over birthday cake. The third Saturday, I texted Rebecca on Friday night, just a casual "see you tomorrow" that felt monumental to send, and received a simple "I'll be there, I promise." That made me smile at my phone like a teenager. By the fourth Saturday, George didn't even ask where we wanted to sit. He just led us to Rebecca's table by the window, the one that was somehow always available no matter how crowded the cafe got, as if Rosie's itself had decided this arrangement was meant to be. April arrived with the kind of weather that made Chicago bearable after months of brutal cold. Trees budding along the streets, people emerging from winter hibernation, the city shaking off its gray pallor. And every Saturday morning, the three of us sat at that table near the window, talking about everything and nothing, while Emma colored on napkins and asked questions that cut straight to the heart of things adults learn to avoid. "I've been thinking about what you said," Rebecca told Emma one morning after the breakfast dishes had been cleared and we were lingering over coffee. "About the poisonous frogs." Emma's eyes went wide. "You remembered?" "Of course I remembered. And I did some research." Rebecca pulled out her phone, scrolling to show Emma pictures of bright blue and yellow frogs that looked like they'd been painted by someone who'd never seen a real animal before. "They're called poison dart frogs. Indigenous people in South America used to use their poison on the tips of hunting darts. That's where the name comes from." "That's so cool," Emma breathed, leaning across the table to see better. "Can I show Miss Patterson?" "Sure." Rebecca handed over her phone with the kind of trust that surprised me. Most adults wouldn't let a 6-year-old within 3 feet of their smartphone. But Rebecca wasn't most adults. I'd figured that out by now. She had a way of listening to Emma that was different from how other grown-ups listened to children, without that patronizing half-attention that said they were really just waiting for the kid to stop talking. Rebecca asked follow-up questions, remembered details from previous conversations, treated Emma's observations about the world with the same seriousness she'd given adults. "You're good with her?" I said quietly while Emma was absorbed in frog pictures. Rebecca glanced up, something unreadable flickering across her face. "She's easy to be good with. She's a great kid." "I think so, but I'm biased. Dads are supposed to be biased." There was a weight to the way she said it, something that made me want to ask questions I didn't have the right to ask, but before I could figure out how to navigate that conversational minefield. Emma was handing back the phone and launching into a detailed explanation of her plan to become a herpetologist when she grew up, which had apparently replaced her previous career goal of becoming a marine biologist. The Saturdays accumulated like photographs in an album. Small moments that individually seemed insignificant, but together formed something larger, something I couldn't quite name but was starting to depend on. There was the morning Rebecca brought Emma a book about ocean animals, bought secondhand from a shop in Pilsen because she'd remembered Emma mentioning she wanted to learn about dolphins. There was the Saturday it rained so hard we could barely see across the street, and we stayed at Rosie's for 3 hours just talking while Emma drew pictures on napkins with crayons George had dug up from somewhere. There was the morning I mentioned offhandedly that I'd been craving my grandmother's apple pie recipe, and the following week Rebecca showed up with a handwritten copy she'd found in an old cookbook at the library, complete with notes in the margins about adjusting the cinnamon. "How did you even remember that?" I stared at the recipe card she'd handed me. Rebecca shrugged, but there was color in her cheeks. "You said it was your favorite. I thought I don't know. I thought you might want it. It was such a small thing, such a ridiculously small thing to feel emotional about." But I found myself blinking back tears anyway because nobody had listened to me like that in years. Nobody had remembered the throwaway comments, the casual mentions of things that mattered only to me. Patricia had stopped listening somewhere around year 3 of our marriage, stopped remembering, stopped caring about the small details that made up the architecture of who I was. But Rebecca listened. Rebecca remembered. And somewhere between the pancakes and the coffee and the easy conversation that flowed like water finding its level, I realized I was looking forward to Saturdays in a way that had nothing to do with my custody schedule and everything to do with the woman who showed up week after week to share a table with us. It was the first Saturday in May when Emma asked the question that changed everything. We'd finished breakfast and were debating whether to walk through Lincoln Park. The weather was finally warm enough to consider it, though the wind still had teeth. "Rebecca, why don't you have a family?" The question landed like a grenade on the table. My stomach dropped. "Emma, that's not something you ask people. It's okay." Rebecca's voice had gone very quiet. She was gripping her coffee mug so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "It's a fair question. You don't have to answer," I said quickly. "Seriously, she's 6 and doesn't understand boundaries." "I had a family," Rebecca interrupted, still looking at Emma. "I had parents and a little sister. Her name was Sophia. She was 9 years old." The past tense hung in the air like smoke. What happened to them? Rebecca was silent for a long moment, and I was about to intervene again when she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was a fire, an apartment fire. It happened at night while we were all sleeping. There was smoke and flames, and by the time the firefighters got there, it was too late." She paused, swallowing hard. "I woke up in the hospital 3 days later. The doctors told me I was the only one who survived." "Oh my God." The words came out before I could stop them. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry. That's how I lost my leg." Rebecca continued as if she needed to get the whole story out now that she'd started. "Part of the ceiling collapsed, crushed my leg so badly they couldn't save it. But I guess that was the trade-off, you know? My leg for my life." Emma was staring at Rebecca with an expression that was too old for her face, that strange comprehension children sometimes have of grief they shouldn't understand yet. "Were you sad?" Rebecca laughed, a broken sound that wasn't really laughter at all. "Yeah, sweetheart, I was really sad. I'm still sad sometimes. My daddy's sad sometimes too," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Because of my mom. She doesn't live with us anymore." I felt my face heat. "Emma, that's not the same thing." "It's true, Daddy. You get sad at night. I can hear you." The confession hit me like a physical blow. I thought I was being so careful, so good at hiding my grief during the hours when Emma was with me. I thought she didn't notice the nights I sat alone in the dark, the mornings I had to force myself out of bed, the constant low-grade ache of everything I'd lost. But of course she noticed. She was 6, not blind. "I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't want you to worry about me." "It's okay to be sad, Daddy. Miss Patterson says everyone gets sad sometimes." "Miss Patterson is a smart lady," Rebecca said, and there was something in her voice, a connection, a recognition that made me look up. Our eyes met across the table, and in that moment I saw my own grief reflected back at me. Not the same grief, not the same loss, but the same fundamental understanding of what it meant to have your life torn in half and be expected to just keep going as if the missing pieces didn't matter. "When did it happen?" I asked gently. "The fire, 2 years ago, March 15th. The date clicked into place. That's why you were alone on your birthday, why you came to Rosie's that day." Rebecca's laugh was bitter this time. "It used to be my favorite day of the year. My family always made such a big deal about it. Balloons and cake and presents, and my dad doing this ridiculous birthday dance that made Sophia laugh so hard she'd get hiccups." She broke off, shaking her head. "Now it's just a reminder of everything I lost." "That's why you came here." I understood now. This place was where you used to come with them. Every Sunday morning for brunch. My dad would always order eggs Benedict with extra hollandaise. Sophia would get chocolate chip pancakes and spend the whole meal picking out the chocolate chips to eat separately. and my mom would steal bites of everyone else's food because she could never decide what she wanted. Emma reached across the table and took Rebecca's hand. It was such a simple gesture, such a perfectly childlike response to adult pain, the instinct to offer comfort through touch when words felt inadequate. Rebecca looked down at Emma's small hand in hers and started crying, silent tears that tracked down her cheeks and dripped onto the table. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I don't usually talk about this. I'm not trying to make things weird. You're not making anything weird," I said firmly. "You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to miss them. It's been 2 years. Everyone keeps telling me I should be over it by now, that I should move on, get therapy, start living again, like grief has an expiration date." "That's garbage." The word came out before I could edit myself. I immediately clapped my hand over my mouth. But Emma was already giggling, and even Rebecca was smiling through her tears. "You're right, though. It is garbage. I did the therapy. I did the support groups. I did all the things you're supposed to do, and it helped, I guess. But nobody tells you that you can do everything right and still wake up some mornings feeling like the world ended and you're the only one who noticed." I understood that feeling so intimately it hurt. The mornings after Patricia left, when I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. The constant disorientation of having to relearn how to exist as a singular entity instead of half of a couple. The way everyone around me just kept going about their lives while mine felt like it had stopped completely. I get it. Maybe not the same way you do, but I understand what it feels like when the world keeps spinning and you're stuck in place. Tell me about them," I said impulsively. "Your family, if you want to." Rebecca looked surprised, then wary, then slowly hopeful. Yeah, okay." So Rebecca told us about her dad who taught chemistry at a community college and could explain the periodic table in a way that made it sound like poetry. About her mom who worked at a nonprofit helping immigrant families and always had the spare room made up for someone who needed a place to stay. About Sophia, who wanted to be a veterinarian and spent all her allowance buying food for stray cats in the neighborhood. She told us about Sunday brunches at Rosie's and summer vacations to Wisconsin and Christmas mornings that started too early because Sophia couldn't wait to open presents. She told us about ordinary things that had seemed mundane at the time but now felt precious beyond measure. Grocery shopping together, arguing over what movie to watch, her dad's terrible puns that made everyone groan. And as she talked, I saw the grief shift in her expression, not disappearing. Grief never disappeared, but transforming into something that could coexist with joy, with memory, with love. They sound like they were wonderful people. They were. Rebecca wiped her eyes with a napkin. "I'm sorry, this is supposed to be a fun Saturday morning, not a therapy session." "Who made that rule? I don't know. Society, social conventions, the general expectation that you don't trauma dump on people you've known for less than 2 months. Well, society can go mind its own business." That surprised a real laugh out of Rebecca, and Emma joined in, though I suspected she didn't fully understand why we were laughing. When we finally left the cafe that morning, walking out into the May sunshine that felt like a promise of summer ahead, something had fundamentally changed between us. The conversations weren't just pleasantries anymore. We weren't strangers being polite or acquaintances making small talk. We were becoming something else, something that didn't have a name yet, but felt important nonetheless. The following week, I invited Rebecca to join us at Millennium Park. It felt like a natural progression. We'd been sharing breakfast for 6 weeks now, and Saturday mornings at Rosie's had started to feel insufficient, like there was more to say and explore than could fit in the space between pancakes and the check. Rebecca hesitated when I asked, "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your time with Emma." "You're not intruding." And then, more honestly, "I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want you there." So Rebecca came to the park, navigating the paths with her crutches while Emma ran ahead, pointing out every dog and interesting cloud formation she encountered. We found a bench near the fountain and sat watching families and joggers and the whole chaotic beauty of Chicago on a Saturday afternoon. I haven't been here in years, Rebecca said, watching a mother duck lead her ducklings across the water in a perfect line. We used to come here all the time. Sophia loved feeding the ducks even though you're not supposed to. We can go somewhere else if this is too hard. No, Rebecca shook her head. It's good. It's actually really good. I've been avoiding all the places we used to go together. Like if I just pretended they didn't exist, then maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. But that just made everything hurt anyway, you know? All the avoidance was exhausting. I know exactly what you mean. After Patricia left, I couldn't go to our favorite restaurants, couldn't listen to the music we used to like, couldn't even drive down certain streets without feeling like I was going to lose it. The whole city became a minefield of memories. What changed? Honestly, Emma, she needed normal. She needed routines and favorite places and things to look forward to. So I had to figure out how to create new memories that weren't haunted by the old ones. That's what Rosie's is, a new memory. Do we push away love to protect others or to shield ourselves from more pain? The question hung between us, unspoken but understood. Rebecca was quiet for a moment, watching Emma try to teach a squirrel to high-five. Can I tell you something? Of course. That first Saturday when I came to the cafe alone, I almost didn't go in. I stood outside for like 20 minutes just staring at the door, trying to convince myself I could handle it. And then everyone kept turning me away and I started thinking maybe the universe was telling me I didn't belong there anymore. That some places are meant to stay in the past. And then we invited you to sit down. And then you invited me to sit down. And Emma sang happy birthday. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe it was okay to be alive. Like maybe I was allowed to have good days again, without it being a betrayal of everything I'd lost. My throat tightened. Rebecca, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I just wanted you to know that you did something really important that day too. You reminded me that connection is still possible, that opening yourself up to strangers can lead to something real. Before I could figure out how to respond to that, Emma came running back, breathless and excited. Daddy, Rebecca, there's an ice cream cart. Can we get some? Please, please, please. I checked my watch. It was barely noon. Emma, we just had breakfast 2 hours ago, but we're at the park. Park rules are different, are they now? Yes. Ask Rebecca. Rebecca knows about park rules. Rebecca held up her hands in surrender. Don't drag me into this negotiation. But she was smiling and I found myself smiling back. And somehow Emma's lobbying campaign for pre-lunch ice cream felt less like a parenting challenge and more like a moment of joy worth surrendering to. Fine, but you're sharing with me. Deal. We bought ice cream from a cart near the playground. Vanilla for Emma, chocolate for Rebecca, and I ended up with strawberry by default because Emma declared it the boring flavor. They sat on the grass, eating their cones, while Emma narrated an elaborate story about the ducks being secret agents on an important mission to save the city from an evil pigeon overlord. And as I watched Rebecca laugh at Emma's increasingly absurd plot twists, I thought about how strange and unexpected happiness could be. How it could show up uninvited in the middle of grief. How it could coexist with pain without diminishing either one. I glanced at Rebecca and found her already looking at me. There was something in her expression that made my heart beat faster. Something warm and uncertain and terrifying in the way that hope is always terrifying when you've spent so long without it. What? Nothing, Rebecca said, but she was blushing. I was just thinking that I'm really glad Emma doesn't understand subtlety. What's that supposed to mean? It means if she hadn't basically forced me into your lives, I would have drunk my coffee alone and left and probably never seen you again. And that would have been a real shame. Heat crept up my neck. Yeah, it would have been. We held eye contact for a beat too long, and then Emma was demanding my attention because one of the ducks was definitely the leader and I needed to appreciate its leadership qualities immediately. The week slid into June, and somewhere along the way, Saturday mornings expanded to include Saturday afternoons. Then occasional weekday texts. Then phone calls that lasted longer than they should have. Conversations that wandered from practical topics to deeper territories. Childhood memories, favorite books, fears we'd never spoken aloud before. I told Rebecca about my marriage, about how Patricia and I had met in college and spent our 20s building a life together that looked perfect from the outside but was slowly rotting from within. About how we'd wanted different things, her craving excitement and status, me needing stability and quiet. About how having Emma had somehow made everything better and worse at the same time. How parenthood had revealed all the cracks we'd been papering over. She wasn't a bad person, I said one evening, sitting on my apartment's tiny balcony with my phone pressed to my ear while Emma slept in the next room. That's what made it so hard. She didn't do anything wrong. We just stopped working, stopped fitting, and you can't fix that no matter how much you want to. Do you still love her? There was something careful in Rebecca's voice, like she was afraid of the answer. No. The truth came out easier than I expected. I love who she used to be. I love the memory of us. But the actual person she is now, the life she wants, that's not my life anymore. Does that make you sad, sometimes? Mostly it just makes me tired. Rebecca understood that kind of tired. The bone-deep exhaustion that came from carrying grief or regret or loss for so long that you couldn't remember what it felt like to be light. She talked about her life too, not just the fire but the after. The months of physical therapy, learning to walk again, to navigate a world that wasn't built for people like her. The casual ableism she encountered daily, the strangers who either stared or looked away too quickly. The job interviews that somehow always went to more qualified candidates. The bookstore was good, she told me. The owner didn't care about my leg. He just cared that I loved books and could recommend the right one to the right person. But he couldn't compete with online retailers, and the rent in Wicker Park kept going up. That's not fair. No, but fair doesn't pay rent. What do you want to do? Like if money wasn't an issue and people weren't terrible? Rebecca laughed. You want my fantasy career? Sure, why not? She was quiet for a moment. I want to work with kids, specifically kids who've experienced trauma or loss. I want to be the person who tells them it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to not be okay, because nobody told me that. Everyone just kept pushing me toward healing and moving forward like those were destinations you could reach if you just tried hard enough. You'd be incredible at that, I said without hesitation. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I've watched you with Emma. You have this way of making her feel heard, of treating her thoughts and feelings like they matter. That's a gift. Or maybe Emma's just an exceptional kid who makes it easy. She is exceptional. But so are you. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when Rebecca spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. Why are you so kind to me? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you barely know me. We met because I was desperate and alone and you felt sorry for me. But you keep showing up, keep listening, keep making me feel like I matter, and I don't understand why. Rebecca. I chose my words carefully. I don't keep showing up because I feel sorry for you. I keep showing up because talking to you makes my day better, because you're funny and smart and you notice things other people miss. Because you make Emma laugh and you remember her stories and you don't treat me like a charity case or a failure because my marriage didn't work out. Oh, Rebecca said very quietly. Yeah, I like you. A lot. And that scares me too, if I'm being honest. Why? Because everyone I've loved has left. Patricia left because I wasn't enough. My dad left because his heart gave out when I was 17. And I know that's not rational. I know correlation isn't causation. But I can't shake the feeling that if I let myself care about you, something terrible will happen. The confession hung in the air between us, heavy with truth neither of us had meant to speak out loud. "I understand that fear," Rebecca said finally. "Better than you know." But June turned into July, and despite our mutual terror, we kept calling, kept texting, kept finding excuses to see each other outside our Saturday routine. And then one Thursday evening, Patricia texted me with news that made my stomach drop. Moving back to Chicago in August, Richard got transferred. "We should discuss adjusting the custody arrangement so Emma can spend more time with us now that we'll be closer." I stared at the message for 10 minutes before calling Rebecca. "She's coming back." The words spilled out before she could even say hello. "Patricia, she's moving back to Chicago next month." "Okay." Rebecca's voice was steady. "What does that mean?" "It means she's going to want more time with Emma. It means everything's about to get complicated again just when I thought we'd found our rhythm. But you're not getting back together." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "God, no. That's not what either of us wants. But Emma's going to have questions and Patricia's going to have opinions about who I'm spending time with, and I just need you to know that whatever happens, whatever gets messy, I want you here. Matthew." Rebecca said my name like a prayer. "I'm not going anywhere." It was a promise neither of us could guarantee, but we made it anyway because what else could we do? Patricia moved back to Chicago the second week of August with the efficiency she brought to everything. By the time she called to arrange our first face-to-face discussion about custody modifications, she'd already enrolled Emma in a private school near her new Lincoln Park townhouse, already scheduled appointments with child psychologists to assess what would be best for our daughter's development, already built a case I hadn't known I needed to defend against. We met at a coffee shop in the Loop on a Wednesday afternoon, neutral territory that felt anything but neutral. Patricia arrived in a crisp business suit, her hair pulled back in the severe style she wore to court. Richard wasn't with her, a small mercy I hadn't expected. "You look good." She settled into the chair across from me with her overpriced latte. "Happy. Thanks." I kept my voice level. "You too. I am happy. Richard is good for me. He pushes me to be better." The implication hung between us, that I hadn't pushed her, hadn't made her better, had somehow held her back from becoming whoever she thought she was supposed to be. "I'm glad you found what you needed." I meant it even though the words tasted bitter. Patricia studied my face for a long moment. "Emma mentions Rebecca a lot. This woman you've been seeing. We're friends." The denial came automatically, even though it was becoming less true with every passing week. "Friends." Patricia's tone suggested she didn't believe me. "Emma says Rebecca lost her leg in an accident, that she lost her whole family." "Yes. And you think this is a stable influence for our daughter? A woman dealing with that kind of trauma?" My hands tightened around my coffee cup. "Rebecca is one of the most stable, compassionate people I've ever met. Emma adores her. I'm sure she does. Children get attached easily. That doesn't mean it's healthy." "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to modify our custody arrangement." Patricia pulled out her phone, swiped to a calendar. "Richard and I can provide Emma with opportunities you can't. Better schools, travel, exposure to culture, and now that we're local, there's no reason she should only see me every other weekend. The custody agreement is court-ordered. Agreements can be modified when circumstances change." Patricia's lawyer voice emerged, cold and precise. "I'm not trying to take Emma away from you, Matthew. I'm trying to give her the best possible life. And you think I'm not? I think you're doing your best with limited resources, but Emma deserves more than Saturday pancakes and hand-me-down clothes." The attack landed exactly where she'd aimed it. At my inadequacy, my failure to provide the life Patricia thought our daughter deserved. I stood up. "If you want to modify custody, file the paperwork. Until then, our agreement stands." "Matthew, wait." But I was already walking out, my heart pounding with rage and fear and the terrible certainty that Patricia had more power than I did. Better lawyers, more money. The two-parent household that family court judges loved. What did I have? A one-bedroom apartment and a relationship with a woman I was too scared to define. I called Rebecca from my car. She answered on the second ring. It went that well? Somehow she could read disaster in 2 words. She wants to modify custody, says Emma deserves better than what I can provide. Better schools, more opportunities, all the things Patricia's money can buy. What did you say? That she'll have to file paperwork. But Rebecca, she's not wrong. I can't compete with private schools and summer homes. I can barely afford the apartment I have. This isn't about money. Try telling that to a judge. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to step back? If my being in Emma's life is going to make this harder for you, I can back off for a while, until things settle. No, the word came out fierce. That's exactly what Patricia wants. To isolate me, to prove I don't have support, that Emma's better off primarily with her. You stepping back doesn't help anything. Okay, then I'm here. Whatever you need. That night, Emma asked why Mommy wanted her to go to a different school. Patricia had apparently started planting seeds during their last visit, painting pictures of better classrooms and more resources, all the advantages Emma would have if she just spent a little more time in Lincoln Park. Do you want to change schools? I asked carefully. Emma chewed her lip, a habit she'd picked up from me. I like my school now. My friends are there, and it's close to Rosie's. Rosie's isn't going anywhere, sweetheart. But if I go to Mommy's school, will I still see you on Saturdays? The question gutted me. Always. No matter what happens with schools or schedules, Saturdays are ours. I promise. And Rebecca too? Rebecca too. She seemed satisfied with that answer, but I lay awake that night calculating legal fees I couldn't afford, strategizing arguments I didn't have the training to make. Patricia had given me 1 week to respond before she filed formal modification paperwork, 1 week to figure out how to keep my daughter. George found me at Rosie's the next morning, staring at my laptop screen where a family law website offered consultations I couldn't pay for. You look like hell. Feel worse. I closed the laptop. My ex-wife is going after custody. Says Emma deserves better than what I can provide. George poured himself a coffee and sat down across from me, his movements slower than usual. I noticed for the first time how much weight he'd lost, how the skin hung loose on his frame. You okay? You look tired. I'm old. Comes with the territory. He waved away my concern. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about you and that lawyer ex-wife who doesn't know what she's got. Had. What she had. We're not together anymore. My point stands. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite the fatigue in his face. How much do you need? What? For a lawyer? To fight this custody thing? How much? George, I can't ask you to pay for my legal fees. You're not asking. I'm offering. He pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, turned the screen toward me. There's $30,000 in there gathering dust. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. Pay me back whenever. Or don't. I'm 68 years old and I don't have kids to leave it to. I can't accept this. Sure you can. Unless you'd rather let Patricia win because you're too proud to take help when it's offered. The logic was irrefutable even if it made my throat tight. Why are you doing this? Because you remind me of my son. He didn't elaborate, but I saw pain flicker across his face, old grief that time had dulled but never erased. And because that little girl of yours deserves a father who shows up. Not a father with money, a father who shows up. That's you, Matthew. Don't let some lawyer convince you otherwise. I took the loan, hired a family law attorney named Michelle who specialized in fathers' rights cases and didn't blink when I explained my financial situation. She reviewed my custody agreement, took notes on Patricia's threats, asked pointed questions about Emma's preferences and my relationship with Rebecca. Your ex-wife is going to use Rebecca against you. Michelle was direct, no sugarcoating. A woman with significant trauma, mental health issues, physical disability. Patricia's lawyer will paint her as unstable, argue that exposing Emma to that environment is harmful. Rebecca has been nothing but good for Emma. I believe you, but family court judges are risk-averse. They err on the side of caution and traditional family structures. You being a single father is already working against you. Add in a girlfriend, Michelle used air quotes, with the kind of background Rebecca has, and it gives Patricia ammunition. So what do I do? You be prepared to defend your choices. You document everything. Every interaction with Emma, every positive moment with Rebecca, every way your current arrangement benefits your daughter. And you prepare for this to get ugly. It got ugly faster than I expected. Patricia filed her modification petition 3 days later. The paperwork arrived via courier on a Saturday morning, right as I was supposed to pick up Emma. Patricia's lawyers had requested primary physical custody with me receiving alternating weekends, a complete reversal of our current arrangement. The stated grounds were change in circumstances, specifically Patricia's relocation to Chicago, and her ability to provide enhanced educational and developmental opportunities. There was also a paragraph about my relationship with an individual experiencing significant psychological trauma and physical disability, and the potential negative impact on the minor child's emotional well-being. They'd made Rebecca sound like a liability, a risk factor, a problem to be managed rather than a person Emma loved. I showed up at Patricia's townhouse to pick up Emma and found my ex-wife waiting on the front steps, her expression carefully neutral. You got the papers. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I got them. This doesn't have to be adversarial, Matthew. We both want what's best for Emma. Do we? Because it seems like you want what's best for your new life with Richard. Emma's just the accessory that completes the picture. Patricia's composure cracked. That's not fair. You're trying to take my daughter away from me because I don't have enough money. Because I fell in love with someone you've decided isn't good enough. How is that fair? I'm trying to give Emma opportunities you can't. That's not an attack on you, it's just reality. Emma appeared in the doorway behind Patricia, her overnight bag already packed. Daddy! She ran down the steps and threw her arms around my waist, oblivious to the tension crackling between her parents. Hey, sweetheart. Ready for our Saturday? Yes. Is Rebecca coming to Rosie's? Patricia's jaw tightened, but she didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The disapproval radiated from her like heat. We drove to Rosie's in silence, punctuated by Emma's chatter about a butterfly she'd seen in Patricia's garden. Rebecca was already there waiting, and when Emma spotted her through the window, she practically dragged me inside. Rebecca, guess what I learned about monarchs? Rebecca caught my eye over Emma's head, and I saw the question there. How bad is it? I gave a small shake of my head. Later. We went through the motions of our Saturday morning ritual. Pancakes and chocolate milk and conversation that should have felt normal but didn't, because I kept thinking about courtrooms and judges and the very real possibility that these mornings were numbered. After breakfast, while Emma was occupied with crayons George had provided, Rebecca reached across the table and took my hand. Talk to me. So I told her about the petition, about Patricia's lawyers painting her as unstable, about the fight ahead that I wasn't sure I could win. Maybe I should step back. Rebecca pulled her hand away. If my being in your life is going to cost you Emma, I can't be the reason you lose her. You're not the reason. Patricia is. Patricia and her need to control everything to prove she made the right choice leaving me. This isn't about what's best for Emma. It's about Patricia winning. But what if the judge agrees with her? What if they decide Emma's better off in a two-parent household with more money and stability? Then we'll appeal. We'll fight. But I'm not giving you up to make Patricia's case easier." Rebecca's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm so tired of being the complication in other people's lives." "You're not a complication. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 2 years. And Emma adores you. Don't let Patricia's lawyers rewrite that story." George appeared at our table, moving slower than usual, his face pale. "Can I borrow Matthew for a minute?" I followed him to the kitchen, concern spiking when I saw how heavily he leaned against the counter. "George, what's wrong?" He pulled out a folded paper from his apron pocket, medical letterhead visible even before he handed it to me. I opened it, scanning words that didn't make sense at first. "Hepatocellular carcinoma, stage 4, median survival 6 to 12 months. You have cancer, liver." He took the paper back, refolded it carefully. "Found out last week. Doctor says treatment might buy me a few more months, but at my age, with how far it's spread, it's just delaying the inevitable." My legs felt unsteady. "George, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I've had a good run, longer than a lot of people get, but I need to tell you something." He pulled out another document, this one legal paperwork, his will. "I'm leaving you Rosie's, the building, the business, everything. It's all paid off, no mortgage. There's some money in the business account, enough to keep things running for a while." "I can't accept this. Same argument you made about the legal fees, and my answer's the same. You're not asking, I'm giving. This place needs someone who understands what it means, not just a restaurant, but a community, somewhere people belong." "George, I don't know anything about running a cafe. You'll figure it out, and it'll give you something to offer that judge. Property ownership, a business, stability, all the things Patricia says you don't have." The calculation was pure George, practical and generous in equal measure, solving my problems even as his own body was failing him. "How long?" "Doctor says maybe till spring if I'm lucky. Maybe less if I'm not. I'm not doing chemo. Not at my age. I'd rather have 6 good months than 12 miserable ones." I pulled him into a hug, this man who'd become the father I'd lost too young, and felt him lean into it with the fragility of someone who didn't have much strength left to spare. "Does Rebecca know?" "Not yet. Haven't told anyone except you." "But Matthew, there's something else you need to know about her." He pulled back, met my eyes. 6 months after the fire, Rebecca tried to kill herself. Walked to the bridge over the Chicago River at 3 in the morning. I was driving home from a friend's wake, saw her standing on the edge. Talked her down, called the paramedics. She spent 2 weeks in psychiatric hold. My stomach dropped. She never told me. She probably won't. Too much shame wrapped up in it. But I need you to understand what you're taking on. This isn't someone who's moved past their trauma. This is someone who's fighting every day to stay on this side of alive. I already knew that. Maybe not the specifics, but the shape of it. And you're sure? Because Emma gets attached to people. If Rebecca can't handle this, if she breaks under the pressure of a custody fight and public scrutiny, your daughter's the one who gets hurt. Rebecca's stronger than you think. I hope you're right. The custody evaluation started in September. A court-appointed psychologist named Dr. Sarah Chen interviewed Emma, interviewed me, interviewed Patricia and Richard, and requested an interview with Rebecca to assess her role in Emma's life and emotional development. Rebecca sat in my apartment the night before her evaluation, anxiety radiating from her like electricity. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they ask about the hospital stay after the fire, about the therapy, about why I can't hold down a job? Tell the truth. You've been through hell and you're still standing. That's not weakness, that's resilience. They're going to paint me as damaged goods, as the unstable woman leading you astray. Then we proved them wrong. But when Rebecca emerged from her 2-hour evaluation with Dr. Chen, her face was ashen. She asked about the suicide attempt. Someone told her. She wanted to know if I was still having ideations, if I was compliant with medication, if I understood the responsibility of being in a child's life. What did you say? That I'm in therapy twice a week, that I haven't had active ideations in over a year, that Emma gives me a reason to wake up in the morning. Rebecca's hands were shaking. But Matthew, she asked if I thought I was capable of being a step-parent. And I didn't know what to say because we've never talked about that. About what this is between us. The question hung in the air, demanding an answer I wasn't sure I was ready to give. What do you want it to be? Rebecca looked at me with eyes full of fear and hope in equal measure. I want to be part of your life, part of Emma's life. But I'm terrified that wanting that makes me selfish, that I'm too broken to be what you both need. I crossed the room, took her face in my hands. You're not broken. You're healing. And healing isn't linear and it isn't pretty, but it's real. And I love you for it. I love you for showing up every Saturday, even when it's hard. I love you for remembering Emma's favorite animals and my grandmother's pie recipe. I love you for being brave enough to keep trying even when the world keeps telling you to give up. The words spilled out before I could second-guess them. Truth I'd been holding back for months because I was too scared to make myself vulnerable again. Rebecca was crying, tears streaming down her face. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. We kissed for the first time in my cramped apartment kitchen, surrounded by Emma's artwork on the refrigerator and the weight of the custody battle pressing down on us from all sides. It wasn't the romantic moment either of us might have imagined. It was desperate and necessary and real. Dr. Chen's report arrived 2 weeks later. Michelle called me into her office to review it, her expression carefully neutral as she slid the document across her desk. It's not as bad as it could be. I scanned the relevant sections. Dr. Chen had noted Rebecca's trauma history and ongoing mental health treatment, but concluded that she appeared to be managing her symptoms appropriately and demonstrated genuine affection for the minor child. However, the report also noted concerns about the stability and longevity of my relationship with Rebecca, given its relatively recent development, and recommended that the court consider the potential impact on Emma should the relationship end. Patricia's lawyers are going to focus on that last part. Michelle tapped the paragraph. They're going to argue that you're prioritizing a new relationship over Emma's stability, but I'm not. Rebecca's been part of Emma's life for 7 months. That's longer than Patricia and Richard were dating before they got engaged. Family court doesn't operate on logic, it operates on optics, and the optics of a single father with a girlfriend who has Rebecca's history aren't great, fair or not. So what do? We focus on Emma. Her psychologist evaluation was positive. She's thriving academically and emotionally. She explicitly stated she wants to maintain her current living arrangement. That carries weight. The hearing was scheduled for mid-October, 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare arguments and gather evidence and pray that a judge would see past Patricia's money to the life Emma already had. George's condition deteriorated rapidly. By the first week of October, he was too weak to work, spending most of his days in the apartment above Rosie's while his assistant manager kept the cafe running. I visited him every evening after putting Emma to bed, sitting beside his recliner while he dozed or reminisced about the 30 years he'd poured into this place. Promise me something. He gripped my hand with surprising strength one evening. Promise me you'll make this place matter. Not just a business, but a home for people who need one. Like you did for me. Like I tried to do for a lot of people. He closed his eyes, exhausted from even this small conversation. Including Rebecca. She needed somewhere that remembered her family. You gave her that. You gave her that first. Maybe we both did. The custody hearing took place on October 18th in a courtroom that smelled like floor polish and broken families. Patricia sat with Richard and her legal team on one side. I sat with Michelle in an empty chair that Rebecca had promised to fill. She arrived 10 minutes before the hearing started, moving through the courtroom on her crutches with her head held high. She'd worn a navy dress and pulled her hair back, professional and composed despite the anxiety I could see in the set of her shoulders. Patricia's lawyers presented their case first, charts showing Emma's test scores and the superior academic programs available at private schools. Financial statements demonstrating the resources Patricia could provide. Testimony from educational consultants about the advantages of smaller class sizes and individualized attention. Then they called Dr. Chen to testify about her evaluation. Patricia's lawyer led her through the standard questions before pivoting to Rebecca. Dr. Chen, in your professional opinion, is it advisable for a 6-year-old child to be regularly exposed to an individual with Ms. Clark's history of trauma and mental health challenges? Michelle objected, but the judge allowed the question. Dr. Chen chose her words carefully. Ms. Clark is managing her mental health appropriately with ongoing therapy and medical supervision. However, I did note in my report that the relationship between Mr. Anderson and Miss Clark is relatively new, and instability in parental figures can be disruptive to a child's development. Patricia's lawyer smiled, satisfied. No further questions. Michelle stood for cross-examination. Dr. Chen, in your interview with Emma, did the child express any distress about Ms. Clark's presence in her life? No. Emma spoke very positively about Ms. Clark. And in your observation, did you find evidence that Emma's relationship with Ms. Clark has caused emotional harm? No, I did not. In fact, didn't Emma specifically state that Ms. Clark makes her happy? Yes, she did. Michelle sat down. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The judge called for a brief recess before my side presented our case. I found Rebecca in the hallway, staring out a window at the Chicago skyline. You okay? I just sat in a courtroom while lawyers debated whether I'm too damaged to be around your daughter. So no, not really. I pulled her close, not caring who saw. We're going to get through this. What if we don't? What if the judge decides Patricia's right? Then we appeal and we keep fighting, because giving up isn't an option. When court resumed, Michelle called me to the stand. I testified about Emma's routines, her friendships, her happiness in her current school and neighborhood. About Saturday mornings at Rosie's and the community we'd built there. About how Emma had blossomed since meeting Rebecca, becoming more confident and empathetic. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined me about my income, my living situation, the one-bedroom apartment where Emma slept on a pull-out couch, about how long I'd known Rebecca before introducing her to my daughter, about whether I'd considered the impact on Emma if my relationship with Rebecca ended badly. Isn't it true, Mr. Anderson, that you're prioritizing your personal relationship over your daughter's best interests? No. I met his eyes. I'm building a life for my daughter that includes people who love her. That's not prioritizing my interests. That's creating a family. Michelle rested our case. The judge reviewed his notes, asked a few clarifying questions, then delivered the verdict I'd been dreading. I'm going to take this under advisement. You'll receive my decision within 30 days. 30 days of not knowing. 30 days of waiting to learn whether Emma would stay with me or whether Patricia had won. George died on November 3rd, peacefully in his sleep with hospice nurses attending. I found out when his assistant manager called at 6 in the morning. Rebecca drove me to the cafe, held my hand while I walked through the empty restaurant George had built from nothing. He left me everything. The building, the business, even the apartment upstairs. His lawyer delivered the papers with a handwritten note. Matthew, make this place matter. Make it somewhere people belong. That's all I ever wanted. That's all anyone wants, to belong somewhere. George. The funeral was packed with people whose lives he'd touched. Veterans from his service days. Customers who'd been coming to Rosie's for decades. Rebecca sat beside me through the service, her hand in mine. while Emma cried quietly for the grandfather figure she'd lost. The judge's decision arrived 5 days later. Michelle called to deliver the news. "You won. Primary custody stays with you." Patricia gets her weekends, but the judge ruled that Emma's current arrangement is serving her well and there's no compelling reason to disrupt it. I couldn't breathe. "Say that again." "You won, Matthew. Emma stays with you." Rebecca was working at the library when I got the news. I showed up at the reference desk where she was shelving books and just said, "We won." She dropped the books she was holding. "Emma stays? Emma stays." She kissed me right there in the library, both of us crying and laughing while patrons stared and the head librarian cleared her throat disapprovingly. Have you ever been the stranger who needed kindness or the one who said yes? The question had answered itself. We were both. We'd both needed saving and we'd both done the saving, and maybe that's what love was. Mutual rescue. I proposed to Rebecca on March 15th, exactly 1 year after she'd first walked into Rosie's looking for somewhere to belong. Emma helped me plan it, decorating table 7 with flowers and drawings while George's assistant manager kept Rebecca occupied in the kitchen. When she walked out and saw the setup, saw me kneeling beside the table where this had all started, she started crying before I could even ask the question. "A year ago you asked if you could share this table, and I said yes to a stranger. But somewhere between pancakes and secrets, you became my best friend. You became the person I can't imagine living without. Rebecca Clark, will you marry me?" "Yes." She pulled me up, kissed me hard. "Yes, absolutely yes." Emma cheered. The whole cafe erupted in applause. And I thought about George watching from wherever good men go when they die, satisfied that his cafe had become exactly what he'd always wanted. A place where strangers became family. We got married in October at Rosie's, small ceremony with 50 people crammed into the space that had witnessed the beginning of our story. Patricia came with Richard, peaceful now that the custody battle had settled into cooperative co-parenting. Emma was flower girl, scattering rose petals with theatrical flair. I run Rosie's now, keeping George's traditions while adding new ones. Rebecca opened a grief counseling practice in the apartment upstairs, working with kids who'd lost parents and siblings and needed someone who understood. Emma thrives, splitting time between 2 homes and 2 families, loved by everyone who matters. Every March 15th, we celebrate Rebecca's birthday at table 7. And every year, someone new walks through that door looking for somewhere to belong, and every year we make room. Because that's what George taught us. That's what love requires, making room at the table for strangers who might become family. Saying yes when everyone else says no. Choosing connection over comfort. Building something beautiful from broken pieces. Have you ever been the stranger or the one who said yes? Share your story, because every act of compassion changes lives. Every yes creates possibility. Every shared table becomes holy ground where strangers find home.